Chapter 1 Konoha. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Xia Li, Konoha, in an ordinary and somewhat shabby small courtyard. Xia Li, today is a school day, don't cry. The boy's mother was pulling the boy and teasing him. Don't worry, mother, I won't. The boy named Shendaquan Xia Li was a little helpless at this time. Looking at his mother's hand holding his clothes tightly, he wondered when he had ever cried. Well, Xia Li thought about it and seemed to have really cried. When he was just born, he was beaten and cried. However, as an excellent young man in the new era of the 21st century, although he didn't know the specific reason, he also knew that babies must cry after they are born. If there is no sound, there must be something wrong, so, from childhood to adulthood, Xia Li also cried and only cried that time, but there was nothing he could do about it. He couldn't hold it back for physiological reasons. Even if Xia Li could hold it back, the medical staff next to him wouldn't let him. Shindao Chuan Shinai looked at her son and felt a little reluctant. After all, it was not easy for the mother and son to depend on each other since childhood. Fortunately, her son was independent since childhood, and even helped her with some easy housework in many cases, which made her worry-free. However, the only flaw was that her son had no childishness like other children, which made Shinai feel a little bit unable to feel the reality of being a mother. She also wanted her son to act more like a spoiled child to her at such a cute age. Come back early after school. Shinai also gave up and said a little helplessly. Okay, mother, it's time to let go, otherwise you will be late for the first day. In the end, Shinai still let go. Originally, she wanted to take a day off to send Xia Li to school on his first day, but Xia Li refused sternly after knowing it. However, Shinai was not too worried. Xia Li liked to wander around the village since he was a child, and the most important thing was that he had never lost his way. Xia Li had been to the ninja school many times. Since Xia Li has gone to school, she should go to work today. After all, there are only two people in this family, mother and son, and she can only rely on her to make a living. Xia Li, 6 years old this year, was born in a single-parent family. It is said that his father is a chunin, but he died while on a mission. According to his father's teammates, his father worked harder to take tasks to earn money for milk powder because his mother was pregnant, and then he had an accident during a mission because he was too tired, and then Sinai was left to give birth, and Sinai was also a ninja, but only a genin, and after getting married, she took the initiative to give up her genin identity. After giving birth to Xia Li, she started looking for some work to make a living. Fortunately, she had been a ninja before, and her ability was still excellent among ordinary people, so it was not difficult to find a job. In addition, Xia Li was precocious, so the hard days were only a period of time in the past. Now their lives are on the right track. As for Shendaquan Xia Li, he is naturally a time traveler, and a native time traveler who grew up from the mother's womb. When Xia Li learned that he had traveled to the world of Naruto, he didn't care. After all, he hadn't started a family in his previous life, and there was not much to remember. It was just a pity that he couldn't fulfill his filial piety. As for Naruto, Xia Li had naturally watched the anime, but unfortunately, Xia Li had a bit of a sloppy attitude towards the plot. After all, there were so many memories, he was too lazy to watch them, and he skipped a lot of plots, but it was naturally better to have seen them than not to have seen them. Then, it was the matter of the golden finger. After 6 years of confirmation, Xia Li reluctantly admitted that he didn't have the golden finger that was necessary for traditional time travelers. He only had this memory of knowing some plots, but this could also be regarded as a golden finger. And the only thing that could be regarded as a golden finger was that the soul power might be stronger, because Xia Li found that it was much easier for him to remember things than in his previous life. Although he couldn't remember everything at a glance, it was already very good. Finally, there is his own bloodline. According to Xia Li's observation, he is just an ordinary person, without any immortal physique, such as Uchiha, Uzumaki, and Senju. This gave Xia Li a headache. He definitely wanted to be a ninja. After all, he was here, and he must have tried the characteristics here. If he just wanted to survive, he might as well choose to marry into a ramen restaurant. If he married into a big family, the other party would probably look down on him. Ordinary ramen restaurants might still be okay, but fortunately, he was not Uchiha. After all, Xia Li found out that he was the same age as Naruto, the protagonist of Naruto, when he was transferred. If he really traveled to become Uchiha, if he didn't have a golden finger, then he would probably die soon. Xia Li's current conditions are not as good as those with golden fingers, awesome bloodlines, or special bloodstains, but it's okay, at least there is nothing worth peeping at. Then, in the past 6 years, Xia Li has not been idle. Although his body is not yet able to extract chakra and cannot learn ninjutsu, he still has to start training from a young age. Although it is called training, Xia Li is also worried that his body is too small and he is afraid that the training will damage it, so the amount is not large and he mainly trains his fingers. After all, although there are all kinds of no-handle ninjutsu flying around in the later period, the speed of the seal is still very important, and the speed of the seal must keep the fingers flexible and dexterous. Xia Li, who has a firm goal, naturally started in this regard from an infant. If he keeps going, Xia Li feels that it is possible for him to reach the fastest speed of hand seals. Even if he cannot reach the fastest, he should be at the top. However, at present, his hand seal speed is close to 3 seals per second. Of course, this is a hand seal without chakra, so the speed will naturally be faster, but this is equivalent to the basic configuration. After getting familiar with chakra, he can still reach this upper limit. Unconsciously, Xia Li has come to the front of his class. At this time, he took a deep breath. He has done everything he can in the early stage. The next ninja school career is still a period for him to accumulate strength, but he has to work harder than before, because as an ordinary person, if he wants to become a powerful ninja, he only has to work hard and have a chance. The most important thing is that there is a very important goal in his plan during this period. At this time, the teacher in the classroom has not come yet. Xia Li looked at the familiar faces and smiled. Fortunately, among several classes, he was assigned to the familiar class, which was the class of Uzumaki Naruto led by Irika. Xia Li scanned the classroom, and did not go out of his way to look for those familiar faces. He just sat down in an empty seat, looking at the noisy classroom without a teacher, and even some crying children. Xia Li put his hands down and made a seal one after another. At this time, a figure walked into the classroom. He had short golden hair and a fox-like beard on his face. His eyes also swept over everyone in the classroom, and finally his face was happy. Because he saw Xia Li. P.S. Newbies, please collect and vote. On December 13, 23, the signing process of the station short distance signing is here. Come on. Chapter 2 Uzumaki Naruto. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Hello, can I sit next to you? Naruto Uzumaki, the protagonist of Naruto, came to Xia Li and asked a little uncomfortably. Sure, I just came too, there should be no one next to me. Xia Li looked at Naruto, but he didn't have any emotional fluctuations, and said calmly. Great. After getting Xia Li's consent, Naruto sat next to him happily. Xia Li and Naruto knew each other before. After all, after Xia Li knew that this world was the world of Naruto, he was still very curious about the protagonist of this world, Naruto Uzumaki. He went to find Naruto Uzumaki when he was walking around before. However, Xia Li's idea at that time was to watch from a distance, and he didn't have any idea about becoming a friend of Naruto Uzumaki. After all, the other party was a Jinchuriki, and there must be many Umbu guards around him. It would be no good for him, an ordinary person, to approach rashly. There are also some possible disadvantages. After all, there may be more than 3 generations monitoring Jinchuriki, and there is also Danzo. Xia Li should not care about anything after the investigation of the 3rd generation of Naruto, but Danzo will probably remember it a little. Although he may not care too much, with the other party's status, as long as he manipulates it casually, it will be a disaster for Xia Li. In addition, there is another disadvantage that is being excluded by the people in the village. After all, people who are close to the monster in their eyes are probably also hopeless, so Xia Li just watched from a distance when he went to see Naruto for the first time, listening to the people around him constantly talking about monsters, and the cold eyes that always existed. Even if he was watching from the side, Xia Li felt suffocated. If the situation is replaced, even if Xia Li is in his second life, in this environment, he will definitely have mental problems, just like Gaara in the early stage. No, Gaara was weak when he was a child, and he was too young to know anything, so he couldn't do anything. If it were Xia Li, he might do something more extreme and would definitely plan to use the nine-tailed fox to retaliate against these people. Didn't you say I'm a monster? Then I will work hard to become a real monster. When I'm strong enough, I'll show you what a monster should look like. Naruto and Xia Li really got to know each other later. Naruto used more money to buy food, but was directly kicked out. The coins were also thrown directly on the ground and stepped on several times. Seeing this scene, and listening to the laughter of the people around him, Xia Li couldn't stand it. Although he didn't stand up, he used his own money to buy the food that Naruto wanted to buy before, and then caught up with Naruto in a deserted place. You want to buy these? Xia Li asked at the time. Yes, yes. Xia Li still remembers Naruto's hesitant answer at the time. Later, Xia Li handed the food to Naruto. Naruto opened his eyes wide at the time. I don't know how long it took before he suddenly thought of something. He quickly wiped the dirty coins with the clean part of his clothes, and then handed them to Xia Li expectantly. Xia Li finally counted the denominations, which were much more than the price of the goods, and left with an expression of having made money. To be honest, he was not interested in this little money, but just wanted to have a reason to make money. If it was just this time, it would be fine as long as he did not show his closeness to the other party. If he went further, Xia Li felt that it was contrary to the plan. It was actually a bit impulsive to just do this. However, it was already uncomfortable to see this scene in the animation. Now, seeing this scene in reality, the oppression made Xia Li suffocate. He felt that he should do something, but in the end he found that he could not do anything. Even if he wanted to help, he had to find a way to oppress the other party's money to help. This was also a temporary method that Xia Li thought of when he thought that Naruto's money might not be spent. He oppressed it, but not completely. However, in the eyes of others, he wanted to make money from Naruto. As for further friendship, he had to consider his own safety and escape. If he was alone, he might be able to give it up, but he was not. Of course, Naruto didn't know this, and he didn't care about the money at all. It was the first time he felt that someone didn't treat him coldly, and he was glowing with new brilliance. Then Naruto met Xia Li again in the village a long time later. Naruto's eyes were instantly locked on Xia Li with a flash of surprise. In Xia Li's helpless eyes, he wanted to find Xia Li, but stopped in the end, because Naruto felt the eyes of the people around him before he even approached Xia Li. At this moment, Naruto understood that if he really found Xia Li, it would probably cause trouble to the other party, just like those people didn't allow anyone to play with them before. In the end, he just passed by Xia Li in disappointment, and Xia Li was relieved that he was not implicated by this matter, but Naruto never took the initiative to find Xia Li again. Xia Li felt mixed emotions. What a good kid. Even in this situation, he still had to think about others. Xia Li came back to his senses and looked at Naruto next to him. The other party must have come to him at this time because there were no adults around. Because children are actually very simple. They just don't want to play with Naruto because of what adults say. Even if people say that Naruto is a monster, they themselves don't know what monster means. Therefore, in Naruto's eyes, adults' malice is much deeper than that of children. At school, perhaps he can get closer to this person who has no malice towards him. Xia Li was thinking about Naruto's character in the future and sighed. Why did he develop such a character? With the influence of the nine tails in his body and the constant malice outside, it would be the strangest to develop such a character, right? Xia Li sighed. The answer he gave in his heart might be because of Ashura, otherwise Xia Li really couldn't explain it, but this answer made Xia Li feel a little cold. How could a character that was forcibly destined not be scary? I hope it's not like what he imagined, otherwise it would be too sad. After a while, a young man with a hair tied up and a scar on his nose finally came late, walked to the podium, and coughed a few times. However, there was still a lot of noise from the audience, which was completely useless. After all, it was no longer the war era, and the students of the ninja school were also more scattered. Xia Li also looked at the teacher on the stage. He was quite familiar with this teacher. After all, he was Naruto's teacher at the beginning. I remember that his name was Iruka, a Chunin. I remember that Iruka's parents also died in the Ninetales Rebellion. At first, he didn't know how to face Naruto, but later he was slowly moved by Naruto and accepted Naruto. In short, the other party is a very good and qualified teacher. Since you know his personality roughly, you should make good use of the teacher-student relationship and ask him more questions. I am Umino Iruka, and I will be your teacher in the future. You can call me Iruka teacher. Next, I will call the names. Please stand up and introduce yourself. Well, I will demonstrate first. Umino Iruka, my favorite food is Ichiraku ramen, and I like positive people. I don't hate anyone for the time being. I hate mixed rice. I want to be an excellent teacher in the future and teach waves of excellent students. After Iruka introduced himself, he picked up the list that had been prepared and started to call the names: Nara Shikamaru, Akimichi Chuji, Yamanaka Ino, Haruno Sakura. Xia Li heard some unfamiliar names and some familiar names. Until he called Haruno Sakura, Xia Li's face was a little complicated. According to his plan, he could only say sorry to Haruno Sakura. Chapter 3 Haruno Sakura. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Xia Li looked at the pink-haired figure who was about to speak, with a complicated look in her eyes. The other party could be regarded as the heroine of Naruto. Although Naruto's final wife was Hyuga Hinata, Hinata's role was not much, so the identity of the heroine fell on Haruno Sakura. Of course, if you regard Uchiha Sasuke as the heroine, then, you are right. Although Haruno Sakura's reputation in the original work is not good, there is no doubt that her strength is definitely at the top of ordinary people, and her efforts and brains are actually quite good. The bad reputation of Xia Li should be due to her love brain. In the audience's perspective, her love for Uchiha Sasuke basically stays at the level of a fan, and there is not even enough reason for the character Uzumaki Karen who likes Sasuke later. Another reason should be that after Sasuke defected, Sakura Haruno could not do anything but cried and begged Naruto. Although Naruto would do it without Sakura Haruno, it was obvious that Sakura Haruno did this, which was not very pleasing. In fact, Xia Li did not like Sakura Haruno when he was a child in his previous life, but the reason for not liking her was simpler than the above. Anyway, I put myself in Naruto's perspective. If you are not good to Naruto, I will not like you. Later, when I grew up, I became indifferent. I can't say I like you, but I have enough appreciation. The reason why Xia Li felt a little indebted to Sakura Haruno was naturally because his target was Sakura Haruno, or more precisely, Sakura Haruno's position. After all, Sakura Haruno was the only person he had a chance to replace. If you think about the identities of other people, you will know that it is unlikely for other positions. First of all, Nara Shikamaru, Akimichi Choji and Yamanaka Ino of the 10th team, as the traditional Ino, Shika and Cho of Konoha, it is basically impossible to separate them. Next is teammates Kiba Inuzuka, Shino Aburame, and Hinata Hyuga, all of whom are ninjas with special skills. Hinata Hyuga's Byakugan and the main Hyuga family cannot be replaced. Kiba Inuzuka and Shino Aburame also have families, but they seem to be replaceable. After all, their families are not considered wealthy in Konoha, but they are not easy to replace. After all, Kiba Inuzuka's ninja dogs and Shino Aburame's bugs have unique skills in reconnaissance. If Xia Li wants to replace them, he must show extraordinary reconnaissance talent, and he is more likely to be assigned to other classes. There is too much uncertainty, and whether he has the opportunity to show enough reconnaissance talent in the 6 years of school is another matter, so he can only be excluded. Finally, there is Team 7 where Sakura Haruno is. Naruto is the Ninetales and Sasuke Uchiha is the only survivor of Uchiha in Konoha. These two cannot be replaced. After thinking about it, Xia Li could only focus on Haruno Sakura. After all, Haruno Sakura was from an ordinary family. Although she had a good theoretical talent, this talent was nothing in front of Xia Li. In comparison, her only advantage was probably her identity as a girl. This was not a joke. Although there was no clear regulation for the division of classes in Konoha, most of them were divided into 2 boys and 1 girl. Therefore, if you want to replace Haruno Sakura, you must not only surpass her in theoretical talent, but also be the strongest in this class. In this case, as the strongest, he is much more likely to be assigned to the elite class. At that time, it will not be a question of whether he can enter or not, but a question of how the 3rd generation will be divided. At that time, you can't throw a genius who is extremely excellent in all aspects into an ordinary class, right? Fortunately, although most of them are 2 boys and 1 girl, there is no explicit regulation for forced pairing. Teams of 3 boys and 2 girls and 1 boy have also appeared. Xia Li wants to become stronger, so his goal will naturally be the elite class. After all, even in the elite class, the gap is so obvious. Although Kakashi Hatake of Team 7 has been abandoned for a long time, he still reached the elite Jonin. Asuma Sarutobi of Team 10 is considered to be an upper-middle level among Jonin. Kurenai Yuhi of Team 8 can only be regarded as an ordinary Jonin with some characteristics in illusion. These elite classes are like this, so there is no need to think about the leading Jonin of other classes. If it is an ordinary Jonin, it is considered good, and it is more likely to be just a special Jonin, so, no matter what, for his goal, Xia Li must strive to enter the elite class. As for Sakura Haruno, he can only say sorry. Although he appreciates her, his priority is himself. Moreover, the upper limit of Sakura Haruno is actually very obvious in the original work. Of the new generation of Konoha Sannin, of course, Naruto and Sasuke, who are both open, will exceed the previous generation of Konoha Sannin, and the upper limit of Sakura Haruno will not be Tsunade, but only little Tsunade. After all, Tsunade is the princess of the Senju clan. What kind of physique is Haruno Sakura? If she takes another path, she may be able to surpass Tsunade, but Haruno Sakura and Tsunade are on the same path. It is basically impossible to surpass Tsunade on this path. And Haruno Sakura's upper limit is like this, so what about Xia Li? He wants to try it. As an ordinary person, he will not plan any special blood and blood. What level can he reach as an ordinary person? Is it better than Jiraiya, the pinnacle of ordinary people, or Might Guy who briefly opened the 8 gates? Or is he not even as good as Haruno Sakura? In any case, you have to try it. Reborn in this world, there is nothing else interesting, so you can only focus on the characteristics of this world. Shinto River Xia Li. At this time, Irika finally pointed to Xia Li, and Xia Li also stood up and briefly introduced himself. I am Kamikawa Natsuki. I don't have a favorite food. The people I like are myself and my mother. The food I hate is coriander. I don't have anyone I hate for the time being. I want to become the strongest ninja in the future. Xia Li's speech did not cause any waves. After all, becoming the strongest ninja does not have any real meaning for them. There are also many people whose goal is to become Hokage, and in their eyes, the strongest ninja is probably Naruto. Well, so Xia Li's introduction is really nothing special. However, when it was Uzumaki Naruto's turn later, Xia Li watched the other party say the same goal in a voice full of energy, but changed the strongest to Hokage, and then sighed with the mocking laughter of the children around him. Although it is much better than the street, the influence of adults on children is already obvious. After class, Xia Li didn't even think about going over to chat and make friends. Naturally, Xia Li, who was sitting next to Naruto, had no one to come to him. After all, Xia Li didn't seem to have much merit. Her appearance was okay but not top-notch. He has ordinary black hair, but he seems to be much taller than his peers. Then Xia Li looked at Naruto, who wanted to talk to him but was worried about affecting him. After thinking for a while, he took the initiative and whispered, "If you are in the class, you don't need to pay as much attention as in the village, but you don't need to be particularly close. Just have a good relationship with ordinary classmates." Xia Li was thinking that as the future of Konoha, Danzo would most likely not be able to reach into the class. He had not heard of anyone of the same age named Shimura just now, so it was an ordinary and normal contact with Naruto as a classmate. It shouldn't matter anymore. After all, Naruto must have a desk mate no matter what, as long as he doesn't show that he is particularly close to Naruto. Besides, for his goal, he has to show enough talent in a short period of time to get into the sight of the third generation. If this is accomplished, even if he is targeted by Danzo, his safety will be at least for a certain period of time. They will all be guaranteed, but I don't know when this opportunity to perform will wait. After hearing Xia Li's words, Naruto's eyes lit up and he asked nervously, "Then can we be friends?" Xia Li looked at Naruto, looked at the other person's expectations, recalled the treatment he received when he saw him before, and smiled. "Sure." However, Xia Li quickly retracted her smile and returned to an indifferent expression. She looked around. It was best to maintain this expression in normal times. It was best to appear to others as someone who had to act with Naruto. The unlucky guy at the same table. Chapter 5 Chakra and Xiao Li. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. After dinner, Xia Li returned to his room and took out the book about chakra extraction and started reading. To be honest, he didn't study so hard in his previous life. Xia Li had a certain basic understanding of chakra. Of course, he didn't know how to extract it. He wanted Sinai to teach him before, but unfortunately Sinai said that although she could still use it, the relevant knowledge had been returned to her previous teacher, and Sinai didn't recommend him to extract chakra before the age of 6, which would have some impact on the body. Xia Li also thought about chakra. Chakra is equal to the combination of physical energy and spiritual energy. Extracting chakra will inevitably affect the body. Among them, spiritual energy determines the amount of chakra extracted at a time, and physical energy is the stock of chakra. Only after being extracted and combined with spiritual energy can it become chakra to be used, and in Xia Li's opinion, physical energy is affected by physical fitness and blood. Among them, physical fitness can be improved after birth, but blood is basically fixed. Ordinary people have a very low blood coefficient, so they need a very high physical fitness to have enough chakra reserves, but some bloods, such as the Uzumaki blood, have a very high coefficient, so the Uzumaki clan does not need a very strong physical fitness to have a terrifying chakra reserve. And the influence of blood is not only that, but also related to the speed of recovery, but this has little effect. After all, the battle can often be decided in just a few rounds, and the fast recovery speed has little effect on a one-time battle. Xia Li had thought about whether there were any natural treasures in this world that could increase the blood coefficient. After thinking about it, it seemed that there was no way. Hashirama cells. Xia Li declined this half-human and half-ghost state. Instead of transplanting Hashirama cells, it would be better to plant a tailed beast, but this was not in line with Xia Li's goal. What Xia Li wanted was to grow to the peak with the identity and form of a human, even if other forms were more powerful. So neither the ghost appearance after the transplant nor the Jinchuriki met Xia Li's goal. After all, it's better to follow the two protagonists than to look like a ghost. Just ensure a certain level of strength so as not to be sacrificed as cannon fodder. Anyway, Xia Li is quite Buddhist. It would be best if he can become stronger. If not, then no, let's go. After thinking about it, it seems that there is really no natural treasure in this world that can improve the blood coefficient. It seems that there is a dragon vein, but Xia Li doesn't remember when it appeared, and it may not meet Xia Li's goals. In this regard, Xia Li can only sigh. If it is a world of immortal cultivation, there are always some strange things that can improve the most basic attributes. Although this kind of thing is generally very precious, it is better than the fact that there is no way to get it here. Although there is a high probability that it will not be obtained, at least there is hope, isn't it? Unlike here, it basically depends on its own mutation, but if it is given to him now, he will not be able to resist using it. After all, it is more practical to strengthen himself rationally than to be unwilling emotionally, but this is only limited to when he is still weak and has no right to be picky. If we wait until he really grows up before giving it to him, he will really say no to them, but I don't know if he can grow up. After reading for a while, Xia Li felt that the food had been digested a little, so he closed the book. Mom, I'm going out. Come back early, be safe. Sinai has become accustomed to Xia Li going out every day. She thought that she would have a quiet day after school today, but she insisted on going out to play. It is impossible to play, because the body is the basis of chakra. In order to avoid the risk of chakra shortage after using a few ninjutsu in the future, Xia Li decided not to be lazy. Xia Li estimated that although he has been exercising all the time, the amount is small after all, so it is only about the same as those ordinary students in the second grade. However, although the amount of exercise has been increasing recently, but the amplitude has not changed, he feels that his body has improved a lot, which should be caused by his age, so the increase in his current amount can probably be increased, Xia Li thought, but this range should also be tested. He can tap into his physical potential, but he must not squeeze his body. After all, his body is just that of a 6-year-old child. Strength is one aspect, and the energy required for growth is also necessary. He must not lose the big picture for the small. However, 1 or 2 times will not have much impact, so he can use these 1 or 2 times to test the limit of his ability to persist, and even break through the limit once. As for the difficulty of breaking through the limit, it is not too difficult for Xia Li. He has experimented before, which is probably related to the strength of his soul, but after breaking through the limit, his body felt a little empty for a few days. That is a typical situation of being unable to bear it. Xia Li never exercised to that extent again. Now he can try it. Xia Li silently came to a more hidden training ground. As expected, there were already people here, and Xia Li was already familiar with this person. After all, basically when he came, the other side was already exercising, and when he finished, the other side was still exercising. Yes, that's right, this person is Xiao Li, a hardworking genius, but Xia Li really feels that the other person's body can't handle it. With the way they train, Xia Li feels that his theoretical upper limit is probably higher. However, this is based on the condition that the growth period is infinite. The problem is that the growth period of a person is limited, and Xia Li may not be able to grow to the theoretical upper limit before the end of the growth period, so, theory is theory, reality is reality. At least for now, Xia Li can't see the possibility of surpassing the other person's physique, nor does he have the idea of surpassing him. After all, he has always seen the other person's efforts. Oh, Xia Li, you are half an hour late today, and you have to do a few more sets of training. Xiao Li's eyes lit up when he saw Xia Li. Although he is also used to exercising alone, he will be happier if he has a partner. Okay. Xia Li just decided to try to break through the limit today, and adding a few more sets may not be enough. Xia Li's answer made Xiao Li stunned for a moment. In the past, the other party would not agree to his extra training, and then Xiao Li's eyes seemed to be on fire. Oh Xia Li, you actually agreed. I'm going to get excited. This is youth. I've decided. I'll reward myself with a few more sets today. Xia Li was a little embarrassed. Even though he had seen it many times before, he still felt that the other party was a little exaggerated. So, let's start today's exercise. Xia Li walked to the other side of Xiao Li. Although they were in the same venue, Xia Li and Xiao Li had different exercise methods. After all, Xia Li believed that his body was still growing, so he would not do some exercises that were too high in intensity. Generally, he would only do some exercises with lower intensity, and then use time to accumulate and measure. Time passed by minute by minute. Even though the intensity was not high, Xia Li was already out of breath at this time, but he had not yet reached his goal this time. His body had almost reached the current limit, but his spirit was okay. He felt that he could still hold on. Xiao Li wanted to cry when he watched from the side. It was really, really exciting. In Xiao Li's eyes, Xia Li's movements suddenly became smooth again. Xiao Li said that he was very familiar with this and he often encountered such a situation, because, this is youth. This time, Xiao Li really shed tears of emotion. I finally succeeded. Xia Li said that his limit seemed to be higher than he had imagined. In fact, it was not a real limit, but the upper limit of his current body. Then, Xia Li said hello to Xiao Li after exercising for a while and left with heavy steps. Although he was physically exhausted, he was in good spirits. He would go back and read some books and try to learn how to extract chakra as soon as possible. The next day, Xia Li magically felt that he was fine. So was his physical progress so great? Then Xia Li tried to break through again, then, on the third day, Xia Li was exhausted. The fatigue from his body at all times made him only able to do some basic exercises. It seemed that although he could break through, he could not do it continuously. This interval was what Xia Li had to master. Xia Li couldn't help but sigh. Physical exercise and chakra accumulation are a long way to go. Chapter 6 Extracting Chakra. You are listening at NovelsThe. After a few days, Xia Li felt that although the physical fatigue had disappeared, the impact had not completely dissipated. When this feeling disappeared, it was almost during this interval, but this is only in the world of Naruto. Although ordinary people in this world can't compare with those bloodlines, their bodies are far better than those in the previous life. Otherwise, Xia Li would probably be dead if he did this in the previous life. No, in his previous life, without the premise of strong mental power, he seemed to be unable to achieve this level. After all, Xia Li was self-aware of himself, and he was not really that strong in terms of willpower. In the past few days, nothing special happened at the school, except that Irika led the class to train and began to teach about chakra. For Xia Li, these are a bit of a waste of time. After all, he has already learned these knowledge by himself, and the intensity of training cannot keep up with the intensity set by Xia Li himself. However, school should have just started now, so the teacher is mainly teaching basic training movements, and I will probably be able to train freely in the future. Now, after Xia Li finished studying the contents in the book, she was about to try to extract chakra. Since it was her first time, Xia Li found time when Sinai was at home and asked Sinai to help watch. Although extracting chakra is generally not dangerous, who knows if an accident may occur the first time. Mom, I'm going to start. Xia Li sat cross-legged on the bed. Although extracting chakra did not require any posture, she always had to assume a normal posture when being looked at. Well, don't worry, I remember that there is no danger in extracting chakra. Sinai encouraged Xia Li. I know. Xia Li nodded. Isn't this just to be careful? What if he faints? Then, Xia Li began to sense body energy according to the knowledge taught in the books. In fact, he had tried to sense it before. It was very easy for him, and he was even more familiar with it now. However, he had sensed it before but did not try to extract it. Now Sinai was watching, and he had insurance in case of an accident, so Xia Li no longer hesitated, combined his mental and physical energy, and began to extract chakra. The accident did not happen. Xia Li quickly extracted it successfully. Then Xia Li controlled the extracted chakra to emerge in his hand. The familiar blue energy made Xia Li feel a little distracted. It was successful the first time. Xia Li is really amazing. Sinai was also a little surprised. Although there is no danger in extracting chakra, it does not mean that it can be successful the first time. So does this represent Xia Li? The talent is very good. Sinai was very happy thinking about it. It was decided that in order to celebrate Xia Li's talent, she would ask her teacher for help in exchange for a shadow clone to surprise Xia Li when she got off work tomorrow. Well, it's okay. Xia Li didn't expect it to go so smoothly. Maybe it has something to do with his mental power. But no matter what, his talent should be pretty good, and it will depend on his talent in ninjutsu later. He just doesn't know what his current chakra level is. He feels that it should be pretty good, but there is no specific comparison and he doesn't know what the specific level is. Xia Li was thinking about it and suddenly found an extra pair of hands on his face. Then he saw his mother grabbing his cheek and saying, "You have successfully extracted chakra." Xia Li should be happy and smile. In the end, under Sinai's clutches, Xia Li could only smile. Although it was a bit fake, Sinai was satisfied. That's right. Why do you keep a straight face at such a young age? Xia Li was a little helpless. He was not paralyzed, he was just thinking about something. In the end, Xia Li successfully escaped from Sinai's clutches, returned to his room, and continued to extract chakra. Although it was useless to extract chakra, he did so to familiarize himself with the extraction process. This extraction process must be familiar enough that there is no need to extract it specially, and it can be used at will. As for what the extracted chakra will be used for, ninjutsu Xia Li doesn't know how to do it yet, but it feels a bit wasteful to waste it like this, so just use it to train control. Step on a tree or a wall. But I thought that the mother next door was probably going to have a rest. If she stepped on the wall and fell, the noise would be quite loud, which would not be good if it affected her rest, so I passed, in addition, the changes in the form and properties of chakra. Nature changes. Xia Li currently doesn't know what his chakra attributes are, so he can only practice form changes. But speaking of a change in form, it is better to say that Xia Li decided to manipulate chakra to form the shape of her imagination. Starting with the simplest spherical shape, Xia Li began to try to release the chakra she extracted through her hands, and Xia Li clearly felt that the chakra quickly dissipated into the air uncontrollably the moment it left the body. Xia Li frowned but did not give up. How could he succeed in one go? Just like this, he extracted, practiced, extracted, and practiced again. Soon, Xia Li's amount of chakra bottomed out. With this amount of chakra, Xia Li felt that if he tried his best to extract it, he would be able to extract it all at once. After all, he could extract it all at once. Quantity is related to spirit, and his spirit happens to be very strong. However, this also proves that Xia Li's chakra capacity is at least not worthy of his mental capacity. Furthermore, the practice of form change has also achieved some results. At least after the chakra leaves the body, Xia Li can still sense a trace of connection, but it is very difficult to control it with this trace of connection. It feels good that there is a connection and Xia Li feels this connection. Later, he only needs to strengthen this connection and the first step will be taken. The bottom of the chakra means that today's work is over and it is time to rest. There are more important things to do tomorrow, that is, to find Irika. First, he needs to ask him how much chakra he has now, at least give a standard value, and secondly, Xia Li will try to get the three-body technique in advance. After all, he thinks that his current chakra has exceeded the level of practicing the three-body technique, so as long as he shows his level, the probability of getting the three-body technique from Irika is not small. If it doesn't work, he will get the seal of the three-body technique from his mother, and then ask Irika teacher how to use it. Thinking about tomorrow's plan, Xia Li also fell asleep silently. The next day, after school, Xia Li found Irika. What's the matter, Xia Li? Irika looked at Xia Li, a little confused. Teacher Irika, I have learned how to extract chakra through the textbook, and I want to ask you about my current chakra level. Huh? Has Xia Li finished his self-study? Irika was a little surprised. In order to be an excellent teacher, he naturally understood the situation of his students, including Xia Li's situation. It can be said that although Xia Li's mother was a genin before, she should not have the ability to teach, that is, she knew the facts but not the reasons, and this also means that Xia Li should have learned the content of the textbook and completed the extraction in just a few days. Although Irika didn't know why Xia Li wanted to know the level of chakra, as a teacher, he must like excellent and hard-working students, so he nodded and agreed. Of course. Chapter 7 Genius. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. After Irika finished speaking, Xia Li immediately began to extract chakra in front of Irika, and this time he extracted all the chakra at once, and released it without hesitation, so that Xia Li's whole body was wrapped in a layer of blue chakra. Irika opened his eyes wide and looked at Xia Li, somewhat unbelievable. He extracted so much this time, so how terrifying Xia Li's chakra reserves must be. However, the next moment, Xia Li and Irika looked at each other. Xia Li, stare, Irika, Xia Li, why don't you continue to extract? To compare the chakra amount, you have to extract all the chakra. Irika reminded. I have extracted all. Xia Li frowned, looked at Irika's reaction, and asked, Teacher Irika, is my chakra amount very small, that if it is really too little, then it will be troublesome, many ninjutsu will be limited by this scarce chakra. A little? No, of course not a small amount, but I didn't expect that Xia Li could extract all his chakra at once. Irika looked at the other party's frowning face, knowing that the other party might have misunderstood, and said quickly. Then Irika teacher, what is my current chakra level? How does it compare with the genin? Xia Li stared at Irika. This was related to his achievements over the past few years. Well, let me think about it. Irika looked at Xia Li, thought for a while, and said, currently, your chakra level is only about twice that of the lowest level of genin who just graduated, but on average, it is about twice as much. Is it so much different? Xia Li frowned again. No, Xia Li, you already have a lot of chakra. After all, Xia Li is still growing up, and the amount of chakra will increase as the body grows. Even in this period, the proportion of chakra naturally grown by the body is greater than the chakra obtained by exercise. After Irika finished speaking, he sensed the chakra around Xia Li's body again, sighed and continued, so as long as Xia Li grows normally until graduation, the amount of chakra should be far above the average level. Is that so? Xia Li finally breathed a sigh of relief. So the results of his hard work are not bad, far above the average level. Suddenly, Xia Li remembered that something was not right. There was an Uzumaki Naruto in his class. The other party's chakra was because he had been the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki since he was a child, and he was also the reincarnation of Ashura, plus the Uzumaki physique, so his own chakra was extremely terrifying even without the Nine-Tails. Counting Naruto, Xia Li felt that he probably couldn't even reach the average level, but he couldn't compare with the perverts, so Xia Li smiled as he thought about it. Irika was also relieved when he saw Xia Li's smile. He almost hit him just now. If he depressed a genius, and this genius was his student, he would not forgive himself. That's right, Xia Li has become a genius in Irika's eyes. After all, he was able to learn to extract chakra from scratch so quickly, and from what he saw just now, his proficiency in extracting chakra is not bad. More importantly, the amount of chakra should be at the average level of the 3rd grade at the beginning of the school. How can all these be not considered a genius, even? There is one more thing, Xia Li. Irika also smiled. He was also very happy that his student had a genius. Huh? Xia Li looked at Irika in confusion. The amount of chakra that Xia Li extracted at one time has exceeded that of most genin, and even comparable to some chunin. This is very powerful. Irika said that he was also shocked at first. Extracting so much at one time made him think that Xia Li had a lot of chakra. Oh. However, Xia Li didn't care much about this. After all, the amount extracted at one time is related to the spirit. In this regard, he still has enough confidence. By the way, Mr. Irika, can I learn the 3-body technique in advance? Xia Li finally mentioned his second purpose, but these two purposes complement each other. Only by showing a level far beyond the 1st grade can it be possible to obtain the 3-body technique. Well, in theory, the 3-body technique is a basic ninjutsu that will only be taught in the 2nd grade, but Xia Li's current level is indeed higher than the 2nd grade, and he can learn the 3-body technique. Irika thought for a while and agreed anyway, it has to be taught, and there is no rule that it cannot be taught in advance. It is not impossible to advance the teaching of the 3-body technique to the 1st grade, but not everyone is Xia Li. Most students still have to start from the basics, so forget it. Thank you, Mr. Irika. Xia Li thanked him earnestly. He went to Irika because he knew the other person's personality in the original work. If it was Mizuki, he would definitely not go to him. But even if he knew that the other person would most likely agree, he was still grateful. After all, the other person didn't owe him anything. Oh, it's okay, and the teacher thinks that it was Xia Li who worked hard to obtain the 3-body technique. Irika scratched his head and laughed. He was happy to be thanked by his students. Then, Irika handed Xia Li 3 scrolls and said, "This is the 3-body technique. There are some of my experiences on it." Xia Li read it first. "If you don't understand anything later, come to the teacher, but remember to return the scrolls to the teacher." Okay. Xia Li took the scroll and looked at it. There were many marks on it. This should be the scroll prepared by Irika for future teaching. Some of them even have notes on how to explain. If he still can't learn this, then he might as well find a wall to die. Xia Li, is there anything else? Irika asked. The teacher has helped me so much, I want to treat the teacher to a meal. Xia Li said. It's only right for the teacher to help the students, and the teacher has something else to do later. Irika wanted to refuse. Ichiraku ramen. Xia Li continued to add. Suddenly, Irika hesitated. He liked to eat Ichiraku ramen, but he didn't need the student to treat him. After all, it wasn't that expensive, and he, a chunin, could still afford it. However, looking at Xia Li's serious expression, if it was just Ichiraku ramen, it wouldn't be a big deal for the other party's family, so he could agree to it. Then Mr. Irika, please go ahead. I'll go home first. I'll wait for Mr. Irika at Ichiraku ramen at 6 p.m. After seeing Irika's hesitation, Xia Li did not give Irika a chance to refuse. He left immediately after saying that. Irika was slightly startled when he saw Xia Li's back. He felt that the other party did not seem to be a child of this grade. After thinking about the other party's family situation, he could not help but sigh. It turns out that children from poor families grow up early. However, the other party actually knew that he liked Ichiraku ramen. Although he had said it before, most students probably would not remember it. Happy. Chapter 8 3 Body Techniques. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Chapter 8 3 Body Technique. After arriving home, Xia Li looked at the scroll of the 3-body technique on the table and a piece of chakra paper he bought on the way. Xia Li took the chakra paper first and input his own chakra into it. Soon, the paper broke in the middle, and the part Xia Li was holding became wrinkled. Wind and thunder. Xia Li nodded when he saw this scene. He was not particularly surprised. His father, whom he had never seen, seemed to have the wind attribute, and Sinai had said before that his attribute was thunder, so Xia Li successfully inherited the dual attributes of his parents, which was pretty good. He just couldn't remember what bloodstains could be formed by wind and thunder. It seemed that there were none, but even if there were, he didn't plan to try. After all, no matter how you think about it, trying to fuse bloodstains is tantamount to courting death. After all, if it was so easy to fuse, then bloodstains in this world would not be so rare. According to Xia Li, the existing bloodstains are all caused by committing suicide or mutation. As for himself, unless he is given a bloodline like Naruto, a medical ninja like Tsunade is always watching him, and he has a physical strength like Might Guy, he will not commit suicide. However, if these conditions can be gathered, what bloodstains are needed? Just rush in. As for wind and thunder, it is not bad. Both Rasengan Shuriken and Raikiri are qualified to learn, but Rasengan Shuriken must have enough chakra and sage mode, and Raikiri needs enough dynamic vision. Otherwise, one will hurt the enemy 1000 and hurt himself 800, and the other will go straight and miss. Although sage mode is in the plan, there is definitely no chance to learn it at present, so pass it first. Dynamic vision basically depends on natural and bloodstains, such as Sharingan and Byakugan. However, not to mention that Xia Li does not intend to transplant someone else's eyes. Transplanting the Sharingan will probably drain Xia Li's chakra directly, and it is unacceptable to go further. The Byakugan is almost the same, but not to mention whether it can be obtained, Xia Li himself is unwilling to get it. Xia Li thought about it. If the sage mode is combined with Raikiri, can this shortcoming be avoided? The sage mode should be a comprehensive enhancement, and perhaps there will be dynamic vision. I can try it if I have the opportunity in the future. The next step is to learn the 3-body techniques. Xia Li read the scroll of the 3-body techniques. The 3-body techniques are not complicated. Xia Li quickly read them all together with Irika's annotations. The 3-body techniques are divided into the clone technique, the transformation technique and the substitute technique, which are all simple and practical basic ninjutsu. Among them, the transformation technique only requires 1 seal, the clone technique requires 3 seals, and the substitute technique requires 5 seals. And the difficulty is also divided according to the number of seals. The learning process is as Xia Li expected. The seal is just a guide, which can better guide the changes in chakra. The most important thing for releasing ninjutsu is the change of chakra. each ninjutsu has its own unique chakra changes, so simply knowing the seals is basically not enough to use the corresponding ninjutsu. So, on the other hand, if you are familiar with the changes in chakra, then you can launch ninjutsu without making seals. Just like those ninjutsu that can be released directly by closing your hands in the later period. As for the 3 body techniques, Xia Li plans to learn them all, but the priority of mastering them later is different. It is enough to be able to use the transformation technique proficiently. If there is time, you can practice the clone technique more. Xia Li plans to focus on learning the substitute technique. After all, this is a simple and very practical ninjutsu, but with 5 seals, it takes nearly 2 seconds at Xia Li's current level. If you encounter a speed-type ninja, you may not have time to use it, so you must compress the use time of the substitute technique into 1 second. Next, it is time to try it. Xia Li controlled the flow of chakra as described in the scroll and made a seal. At the same time, a figure appeared in his mind. Transformation technique. A white smoke rose, and when it fell, a small but graceful woman appeared. Then Xia Li looked at the figure of Tifa in the mirror, and suddenly his face turned red and he cancelled the transformation technique. Xia Li did not expect that he would succeed at the first time, and Xia Li suddenly felt that maybe he could practice the transformation technique more. Ahem, Xia Li looked around and breathed a sigh of relief. The transformation technique was just like this. He just needed to use it a few more times to get familiar with it. After all, it was just 1 seal, and it was impossible to simplify it. Then, different figures appeared in Xia Li's room again and again. Although they were all small, they became more and more exquisite. Basuna, Misaka Mikoto, came. Time passed quickly. When Sinai came back, Xia Li was already able to use the clone technique and the substitute technique. How should I put it? It seemed much simpler than Xia Li imagined. Unlike the 1 seal of the transformation technique, Xia Li was not very proficient in the use of the clone technique and the substitute technique. The change of chakra could not keep up with his original seal-making speed, but this is not a problem, just practice more and it will be fine. Xia Li realized at this moment that his talent might be much stronger than he had imagined before. Even if the 3-body technique is simple, being able to learn it and successfully use it for the first time is enough to prove his talent. So, I am still a genius. Mom, welcome back. After hearing the door open and Sinai's voice, Xia Li also came out of the room and came to the living room to greet. Ding 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 ding. After seeing Xia Li, Sinai took out a scroll like a show-off. Little Xia Li, look at what this is. Shadow clone technique. Xia Li said calmly. Well, it's shadow clone technique, but shouldn't little Xia Li be happier? Sinai looked at Xia Li's reaction a little boring. Well, I'm very happy. Xia Li smiled. Hey, here you go, my little adult. Sinai handed the scroll to Xia Li, and then said, I went to find the teacher, and the teacher also said that shadow clone is not suitable for you. Well, but I think it's very suitable. Xia Li took the scroll a little excitedly. I knew you wouldn't listen to advice, so I still exchanged it, but fortunately it's shadow clone. If it were other B-level ninjutsu, it might not be exchanged. Sinai said. Why? Xia Li also became interested after hearing this. Teacher said that although the shadow clone technique was developed by Konoha, it was actually learned secretly a long time ago. Other villages also have similar ninjutsu, so there is basically no need to keep it secret. Other ninjutsu are still very precious and are generally not exchanged for people like us who may be exposed. Sinai replied. Xia Li nodded. This was understandable, but after all, he got the shadow clone technique, and the next learning goal was set. By the way, Mom, I won't be home for dinner tonight. Xia Li remembered that he had invited Irika to dinner, and that he would wander around the village after dinner and should be back later. Huh? Why, did little Xia Li dislike Mom's cooking so quickly? Sinai pretended to be depressed and wiped away 2 non-existent tears. Of course not. Xia Li told Sinai what he and teacher Irika had said. Chapter 9 Legacy. You are listening at NovelsThe. Is that so? Then we should really thank Irika-sensei. Sinai was a little surprised, then said with a smile, Xia Li's chakra amount was beyond Sinai's expectations, not to mention the amount of extraction. Sinai remembered that the chakra amount of himself and Xia Li's father was not much, just average. He didn't expect Xia Li to be so good. In fact, it was also because Xia Li's parents were ninjas, so his natural chakra amount was pretty good, but more importantly, Xia Li had never slacked off over the years, and for the sake of his physical growth, he never treated himself badly. By the way, little Xia Li should have seen the three-body technique, right? How does it feel? If there is anything you don't understand, I can also demonstrate it. Although I don't know how to teach, I can still demonstrate it. Sinai said with a smile. I have learned everything. Xia Li replied. Sinai nodded subconsciously, then came back to her senses, and after noticing the meaning of Xia Li's words, she couldn't help but widen her eyes. She knew her child's personality and would not lie about this, but this was too incredible, right? He learned it the first time. Xia Li looked at Sinai's surprised look, then smiled, quickly made a seal, and a white smoke rose. The next moment, the two Sinai, one big and one small, looked at each other. Xia Li could choose to use more chakra to construct the same height as Sinai, but there was no need to waste chakra just for the show. Sinai looked at the smaller version of himself in front of him, a little dazed. Not only could he use it, but his level was not low. Except for the height, the exquisiteness of this change was enough. If you don't observe carefully, you may really be able to mistake the fake for the real thing. After Xia Li lifted the transformation technique, he used the clone technique and the substitute technique again. The seal was a few points faster than before. The clone technique took less than 2 seconds, and the substitute technique took a little more than 2 seconds, but it still did not reach Xia Li's highest seal speed. However, this was already a bit incredible in Sinai's eyes, because she herself was not as fast as Xia Li in using these two ninjutsu. At this moment, Sinai finally understood her child's talent in ninja. She knew before that he should be excellent. Now it seems that this is not just an excellent level, but an absolute genius. However, even for a genius, the road of ninja is full of dangers. Sinai sighed, but did not stop Xia Li from becoming a ninja. After thinking for a while, he walked into his room. Xia Li looked at Sinai's back, a little confused. Then, Sinai came out with a few scrolls and handed them to Xia Li. What is this? Xia Li was a little surprised. The ninjutsu that we exchanged before were all sea level. In fact, the shadow clone that you just gave you was what your father was going to use to exchange for the B-level wind-style ninjutsu vacuum jade, but because the sea-level ninjutsu is not fully mastered, it has not been exchanged yet. Sinai said without any disappointment, and he has been used to it for so many years. I originally planned to give it to you after you officially become a ninja, but since Xia Li is so talented, I can't delay your time, so I give it to you in advance. With Xia Li's talent, he should be able to learn it quickly. Although I think my little adult doesn't need to be reminded, I still have to say that he should learn to do what he can and never force himself. Well, I know. Xia Li took the scroll solemnly and took a quick look. There were a total of 4 ninjutsu, all of which were sea-level, namely Wind-style Fierce Wind Palm, Wind-style Wind Cutting Technique, Wind-style Great Breakthrough and Thunder-style Ground Walk. As for the Wind Escape Technique, it was from my dead father. It looks like a good combination. It has a large-scale breakthrough, a single-point wind cutting technique, and a close-range Fierce Wind Palm. With these, Xia Li feels that there is no need to exchange for other sea-level wind escape techniques. As for the thunder escape technique, it should be from my mother. However, I remember that this technique does not seem to be very practical. Most battles take place on land, so this technique must be combined with water escape technique to exert its maximum power. However, Xia Li does not plan to learn these ninjutsu now. His current chakra should be enough to use it, but after using it, even if it is the smallest power, there is a high probability that there will not be much chakra left. It is estimated that it will not be used many times. Such practice efficiency is too low. Instead of learning these, it is better to continue to familiarize yourself with the substitute technique that consumes very little chakra, and you can also learn the shadow clone. Although the shadow clone is B-level, it only divides the chakra amount, and the amount of chakra should determine the duration of the shadow clone. If the shadow clone does not use chakra and only considers the natural consumption of maintenance, then even if the chakra amount is not much, it should be able to last for a certain period of time. Then Mom, I'm going out first. Xia Li said after putting away the scroll. Okay, you have to thank Irika teacher well, okay? If you have a chance, you can go to the barbecue restaurant where Mom works. I will arrange the freshest ingredients. Sina said. There's nothing I can do about it. I also want to, but Irika teacher probably won't agree. Xia Li said. Well, what a good teacher. Sina nodded, and sighed a little. It's also a kind of luck to meet such a teacher. In front of the Ichiraka ramen store, Xia Li arrived quite early. Irika hadn't arrived yet. Xia Li looked at the bustling Ichiraka ramen and couldn't help but sigh that the business was really good, but it is not difficult to understand. After all, the taste is really good, and the price is affordable. The hand-typed uncle in the store now looks younger than in the anime. Is Xia Li here so early? Irika said in surprise when he saw Xia Li's figure. He thought he came early enough, but he was still later than Xia Li. Well, after all, it's my thanks for the meal, so I have to come earlier. Xia Li said. Actually, it's okay to be late. Irika scratched his head. He felt that Xia Li was really not a child. Teacher Irika, let's go in. Xia Li said without answering this question. Okay. Irika always felt that he was talking to a peer, but the other party was indeed a child. This feeling was a bit strange. Hand-typed uncle, give me 2 of the most luxurious ramen. Xia Li said. Okay, it's Xia Li, what's the good news today? After hearing Xia Li's words, Xiao was a little surprised. The other party had basically never ordered the most luxurious ones before, and of course not the cheapest ones. After all, Xia Li has always believed that you need enough meat, eggs and milk to grow up, so he will never treat himself badly in terms of food. Well, there are a lot of surprises today. Xia Li nodded seriously. Whether it was the 3-body technique, the shadow clone, or the last few ninjutsu, they were all surprises. Xia Li classmate, don't spend so much money. Irika also said at this time. Irika teacher, just call me Xia Li, and even so, I don't think it's enough, unless the teacher agrees to go to the barbecue restaurant with me later. Teacher, you should know that my mother works there, so it can be cheaper. Xia Li said seriously. Let's talk about it later when there is a chance. Irika scratched his head and still didn't agree. Xia Li looked at Irika and didn't force it, sitting aside waiting for the arrival of ramen. During this process, Irika looked at Xia Li, a little hesitant. He had also encountered a problem recently. Although this problem was not Xia Li was indeed the closest to him, so he was a little confused and wanted to ask. Teacher Irika, just ask if you have anything to say. I will definitely answer what I know. Xia Li saw Irika's thoughts first. Is it so obvious? Irika scratched his head and smiled awkwardly, then restrained his smile and asked, Xia Li, teacher wants to ask, what do you think of Uzumaki-san? Chapter 10, Revealing Talent. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Chapter 10 Showing Talent. Xia Li paused for a moment. Even Irika didn't know how to deal with Naruto in the early stage. From the beginning, Irika called himself Xia Li-san instead of Kamitagawa-san. He called Naruto Uzumaki-san. It can be seen, but that's right, after all, Irika's parents died at the hands of the 9-tailed demon fox. Thinking of this, Xia Li looked at Irika and said seriously, I think Naruto is very good. Naruto? It seems that Xia Li has a really good relationship with him. Irika couldn't help but think after hearing this title. Really? That's good. Irika didn't know what to say, so he just wanted to expose it. Teacher Irika, I have met Naruto before going to school. Don't make any noise. You will know after a while. Xia Li said seriously. After finishing a seal, the next moment, Irika appeared in front of him. That familiar figure that he didn't know how to face, Irika opened his eyes wide and looked at Xia Li, who had completed the transformation. How long had it been? Have you learned the art of transformation? And he seemed to be very skilled at it, and he couldn't tell the difference between Naruto and Naruto. Although he was shocked, he thought of what Xia Li had said before, and he didn't say anything. Soon, there were new customers at Ichiraku Ramen, but after they saw Naruto Uzumaki, they couldn't help showing expressions of disgust, and some even cursed in a low voice before leaving. Irika watched this scene with some depression, maybe thinking about something in his mind. At this time, Xia Li also released the transformation technique, looked at Irika and said, Naruto has always suffered this kind of treatment, so it is really amazing that Naruto can still be what he is now. If it were me. If so, I will never be like Naruto. Irika was silent for a while and then said, You're right, Naruto-kun is really not easy. Well, I don't think Naruto has done anything wrong, and he is not in any condition to do anything wrong. The people in the village hate him probably because of his elder, but as far as I know, Naruto has no relatives anymore. I think it's too much to force the mistakes of the elders onto him, Xia Li said. Irika nodded, but did not explain that the elder in Xia Li's mouth did not exist. It was the monster that the village hated. But Xia Li was right. He actually understood it at the beginning, but he just couldn't get over the feeling in his heart. First level, but after seeing Naruto's treatment just now, I feel that if he continues like this as the other party's teacher, he will indeed be unqualified to be a teacher again. Having figured it out, Irika breathed a sigh of relief and felt his whole body relax. Then he finally looked at Xia Li with a smile and said, Let's not talk about it anymore. Xia Li, you learned the transformation technique so quickly. Oh, and you use it so skillfully. If I hadn't known that you had just obtained the three-body technique, I would have thought that you had been learning it for a long time. Well, the three-body arts are very basic and simple. Xia Li replied, and then quickly formed the seal, this sealing speed. Irika's eyes shrank, and then he realized something. His eyes widened, and then he looked blankly at Xia Li, who used the clone technique and the substitute technique. He was completely shocked. If this level is only in terms of ninjutsu, if you can graduate and become genin during the war, therefore, Xia Li is definitely a genius, and not just an ordinary genius. Xia Li and Irika, your ramen is ready. At this time, Uncle Handy came over with a full bowl of ramen. Teacher Irika, it's time to eat. Xia Li saw Irika's appearance and said. Oh, okay. Irika was still in shock, eating ramen sluggishly. Xia Li naturally did it on purpose. If he had enough background, he would definitely choose to hide part of his talent, but he didn't. As a civilian ninja, he naturally had to show off his talent so that he could get more attention. And nurturing, even if the teachings of the three ninjas can be obtained now, then Xia Li will directly overturn the previous plan, but it is unlikely. Orochimaru is already a traitor. Even if he wants to accept Xia Li as a disciple, he will not do it for Sinai. It's impossible to accept it. Jiraiya should still be wandering around collecting information because of the prophecy. It's unlikely that he will come back. As for Tsunade, she is even less likely to return to this sad place because of her hemophobia. After eating ramen, Xia Li and Irika separated. It could be seen that Irika had not recovered yet when he left. Seeing Irika like this, Xia Li's goal has been achieved. Soon his talent will be passed on to the third generation. After all, although the third generation Hokage only has the name of principal in the Ninja Academy, he still has it, right? Now, Xia Li is walking towards the training ground. Even if he knows that his ninjutsu talent is terrifying enough, he cannot stop basic training. After all, this is related to the amount of chakra, so he must continue to work hard. As for the training of the three-body technique, I have used it so many times today that even if the chakra is recovered naturally, there is not much chakra left, so I can put it down for today. When I practice the three-body technique later, it is also time to practice stepping on the tree and going further. Treading water. These two did not have high requirements for the amount of chakra, but they had certain requirements for the control of chakra. With today's experience in learning the three-body technique, Xia Li felt that he should be able to learn these two very quickly. Moreover, in the future, you can also fight against Xiao Li. After all, you have learned the three-body technique, and you should be able to fight. If you fought before, you would definitely be looking for abuse. It is probably about the same now, but you also have the ability to fight back. It's time to start with power. Just learning without fighting is not enough. There is also the subsequent learning of shadow clones. Well, there are also changes in the shape and nature of chakra. Xia Li had a headache as she thought about it. Things seemed to be slowly increasing, but that was fine. Xia Li could clearly feel her progress. If she could maintain this kind of progress, maybe by the time she graduates there will be a surprise. While Xia Li continued on his own path to becoming stronger, Irika also came to the Hokage's office. He thought it would be better to tell the Hokage about Xia Li's talent. The other person's talent should have a better teacher. Well, it's Irika, what's the matter? Sandai was a little surprised when he saw Irika, but still asked gently. Irika looked at the crystal ball next to him that seemed to have traces of use. Without thinking much, he told the third generation about Xia Li. Huh? Really? It does seem to be a good prospect. After hearing this, Sandai's eyes showed surprise. After thinking for a while, he said, there is no need to talk about changing teachers. I think you have enough level to do it. Teach the current Xia Li, but you can teach some ninjutsu that exceeds the limit. Yes. Irika left after reporting the situation. The third generation took a puff of cigarette. Although it was only the beginning, he felt that he should have a talent like Minato. Such a talent cannot be wasted easily, but what gave him a headache was that he no longer had the time and energy. When to teach a student, it's okay for Jiraiya and Tsunade, but it's difficult for him to contact Tsunade. Although Jiraiya left his contact information, it's probably difficult, so I can only take another look. If he is really talented, then it is not impossible to give him the technique in advance after the opponent's chakra has accumulated, just like Jiraiya gave it to Minato in advance, if another, yellow flash, could appear in Konoha. It's really exciting.